if I need such tiny doses? Like, where do I get a hold of these tiny doses?
Yeah, so the problem right out is that they're very difficult to get a hold on, to buy the doses. So what we do is we make them ourselves. Like, we have to make smaller doses than the standard available ones. And like the most common options would be to obviously use the break line for as long as you can. If you can have half the pill with the two pieces being equal size, then do that. And maybe with a pill cutter you can quarter it. You can half it again. But as soon as the pieces you get start to be of different sizes, then don't use them for tapering, because that'll mean that you'll get different doses on different days. And that's the last thing we want, because remember, tapering is all about gradually allowing the body to adapt to a lower dose, and that doesn't happen if you take changing doses. So we want to use the break lines for as long as we can. Usually that's one should try. And then we need to, an obvious, for most drugs can be dissolved in water, so we just make a water solution. Say you want to go from 10 to 9 milligrams, that's 10%, but there's no way you can equally cut 1 milligram of a pill of that size. Impossible. So what do? We dissolve the 10 milligram pill in, say, 50 milliliters of water. It's not that important how much water, just as long as you know exactly how much there is. So going from 10 to 9 would mean that you dissolve the pill in 50 milliliters of water and removed 5, because 5 out of 50 is 10% and 1 out of 10 is 50%. So going from 50 to 45 would mean a 10% dose reduction. And then once it's dissolved, if the drug is able to be dissolved, which most drugs are, some are not, because different manufacturers can use different coatings and stuff in the pill that makes it a pill. So if you weigh the pill, it will weigh way more than the milligrams, because there are all sorts of things in combining it into a pill. And some of the manufacturers are less soluble in water. Obviously you can't use those, but most of them are actually perfectly able to dissolve in water. And once that's done, we've broken free of the standard doses. Like, you could reduce with any amount of percent. You could reduce with 1%, 0.5% even, by just using small enough syringes. And maybe I should add, we want this to be very precise. We don't want to eyeball how much water is here. And we don't want to use like deciliter cans and stuff like that. We want to measure it very precisely, 50 milliliters or 40 or 60, or whatever adds up with the dose. And then another syringe to take exactly 5. And then 10, and then 15 from time up. And that's the way to get smaller doses in that way. You could also technically weigh the pill and then just reduce the dose until the number on the screen, which obviously will be higher than the dose you're taking, because the pill weighs more. And then just cut off the pill until that number on the weight is reduced by the 10 or 5%. I don't see many advantages of weighing over dissolving it in water, though. And some pills are not, well, they're not pills, they're tablets, they're capsules with little beads inside them. And you can't dissolve those in water. It's not a good idea. So what you want to do is open the capsule and count the beads, and then reduce the dose with the same amount of beads that you want to reduce the dose. So that could be anywhere between 100 and 200, maybe 300 small little tiny beads in it. And some of the capsules have down to 4 to 8 called minute tablets in them. So they're not beads, like 4 to 8 minute tablets making up the, say, 30 milligrams of Cymbalta or 37.5 milligrams of Effexor. And that looks more technical because it's easier to manage 8 than many hundreds. But I assure you, at some point, 1/8 of the lowest dose will also be too much for the system for a nervous system to keep up with. So even though it seems more practical to taper with the smaller or the bigger minute tablets, don't do it, because at some point you'll have to convert to the beads too. And this does get, these are just some overall general sense. It actually comes down to the individual brand and pill. So it gets pretty technical if we had to explain it all, but there's a lot of information on this online on for example, Inner Compass Initiative, their withdrawal project. They have a called a companion guide there with all the details about what drugs can be separated in this and that way. So some compounding pharmacies, they're called, do make the drugs into liquids. So you'd have your drug in a liquid form rather than a pill form. And sometimes the doses of the liquid does go lower than the pills, making it easier to come off. But still, depending on how they've made it, you might need, especially towards the end, to also dissolve the drops. Like one drop, you get like a glass and a little pipette thing, so you can get one drop of the drug. That drop in the end will also be too much, and then we're back at square one, right? Then you'd need to dissolve a drop into water. There's not a lot of difference between making the solution yourself and making the drop. So it can definitely help some of the way, but oftentimes you'll end up having to dissolve that drop too.